Nowadays, it's hard to imagine how different America was for women 50 years ago compared to today. But thanks to a group of brave visionaries, American women are now able to enjoy far more freedoms and opportunities. Gloria Steinem and the founders of Ms. were some of these trailblazers. During the 1970s, Gloria Steinem created Ms. magazine to give women around the world journalism written by women for women. Ms. was a turning point in women's journalism and reflected a turning point in the women's liberation movement. It helped create a social shift about the perception of women's roles. It provided a platform for women to write and read about anything they found important, not what society dictated women to read. It helped to empower women around the world and encourage them to tune into important issues in the world around them. Before the 1970s, women's magazines avoided serious topics. Real news was only considered appropriate for men. Gloria Steinem didn't like that because she wanted women to be equal to men and to be able to read whatever they wanted, so she set out to change it. Ms. was a part of second-wave feminism. There are several different waves of feminism. The first wave, from 1948 until the 1920s, focused on getting women the right to vote and was centered more around the suffragists. First-wave feminism is when women finally got the courage to stand up about what they thought was unjust and unfair. Historic records of the challenges, obstacles, and, suffering women went through for over 70 years just to have the right to vote are eye-opening and disturbing. The second wave of feminism, from 1968 to the 1980s, was focused on gaining more rights and opportunities for women in society. It targeted the perception of women's roles. Before and during second-wave feminism, women had very few rights that we don't think about today. They couldn't own land, have bank accounts, or credit cards. That's right, women were only legally allowed their bank accounts for the past 50 years or so. Opportunities for women were limited too. Only a few specific jobs were widely accepted as appropriate and obtainable for women. They could be maids, teachers, nurses, or secretaries, but the aspiration that all women were expected to aim towards was becoming a wife and mother. For many women, that was not enough, but they didn't know that. Not only how to change it, but that they could change that. After graduating from Smith College in 1956, Gloria Steinem won a fellowship to India. There, she learned from followers of Mahatma Gandhi about the power of peaceful protests and how to organize. This sparked what would become a lifelong interest in grassroots protesting. Then, in 1960, she started work as a journalist in New York City. She got her big break in 1963 with her article, A Bunny's Tale, which exposed how poorly the Playboy bunnies were treated in the Playboy Club in New York City after Ms. Steinem went undercover as a bunny in the club. Publishers wanted Ms. Steinem to keep writing about the bunny business and other more feminine topics, but she had other ideas. In 1970, a group of feminists planned to take over the headquarters of Ladies' Home Journal as a protest of the magazine's stereotypical content. They exclusively published articles about traditionally feminine topics. The exact type of content the feminists were trying to prove wasn't the only thing that women cared about. This served as an awakening of sorts for Gloria Steinem, and brought into focus for her that women didn't have much to read besides magazines like Ladies' Home Journal and Cosmopolitan, which only really contained articles and images related to beauty, fashion, and household tips. She realized that the feminists and their movement needed their own magazine. This concept was great, but what was the name of this magazine supposed to be? After some debating and contemplating, The creators of this new magazine decided to call it Ms. Magazine. Ms. was the female version of Mr. It didn't have anything to do with marital status and existed as a term for women in general, but wasn't widely used. Separating women from their marital status was a very novel concept. Now, Ms. Steinem, along with a few other founders, including Patricia Carbine, Letty Cotton Pogrebin, Joanne Edgar, Nina Finkelstein, Jane O'Reilly, and Mary Thom, were challenged with creating both a cover as well as engaging content that shared their feminist views. They wanted their magazine to be controversial and talk about things that haven't necessarily been talked about publicly before. When they published their sample issue in December of 1971, attached to New York Magazine, it was expected to sell very few copies, but it sold all 300,000 copies in 8 days. The concept proven, Ms. Magazine as a monthly magazine was born. The first full Ms. Magazine issue had Wonder Woman on the cover. Wonder Woman was chosen to be on the first cover since she stood for more than just being a woman, but also defied what people thought was possible for a woman. In the first issue of the magazine, there was an article called We Have Had Abortions, which contained a list of many women who had abortions, including notable women like Billie Jean King and Ms. Steinem herself. Doing something like this was unheard of before and incredibly controversial at the time, but also helped women feel more comfortable about what was going on with their own bodies. As one would think, anything that contains as many controversial topics as Ms. does will face both criticism and hate. Harry Reasoner, who was a very famous journalist and reporter, said while on national news that he would give Ms. Magazine 6 months before they ran out of things to say. Even President Richard Nixon thought that it wouldn't succeed, asking in his own way in a conversation with his Secretary of State on the White House tapes how many people could possibly care about Gloria Steinem and her feminist magazine. They said what many thought, that a magazine with disturbing topics, images, and ideas simply shouldn't exist or wouldn't succeed. Even some of the feminist groups, such as the Red Stockings, thought that Ms. wouldn't succeed. The Red Stockings were and still are a feminist group who famously and falsely claimed that Gloria Steinem was associated with the CIA. Many simply went after Gloria Steinem for any reason they could think of, such as calling her too attractive and too pretty to take on serious issues. A magazine for women, by women, was something that had never been done before. Ms. helped create a social shift about what society thought of women overall. Women finally had somewhere to look and something to hold that connected directly to them and what they were going through. And not just finding the right cosmetics, but health issues, domestic violence, workplace sexism, and many other topics that nobody had had the courage to talk about publicly before. At its height, Ms. Magazine has reached an estimated 3 million readers. Author Judy Blume has said that Ms. Magazine made her feel less alone, a sentiment reported by women across the country as many women wrote letters to Ms., expressing their gratitude and how much Ms. Magazine meant to them. Today, many people still read Ms., now printed quarterly and available online, to keep informed about women's issues and feminist news. 50 years since it was launched, the galvanizing legacy of Ms. is undeniable. PEN America, an organization dedicated to protecting free journalism and writing for everyone, honored Ms. in 2023, saying, "Through its art, literature, and journalism, Ms. Magazine became a platform that educated, inspired, and mobilized equality. By challenging norms, amplifying important issues, and following their own dreams, Gloria Steinem and the founders of Ms. changed the landscape of what was widely understood to be possible in journalism and for women."